All right, you ready?
My name is Clinton Elmore. I'm video production specialist for the School of Journalism at the University of Tennessee, where I wear many hats. Well, as part of my responsibilities, I am the director of the Volunteer Channel, which is a student media organization. We do everything from hard news to we have a comedy sketch show called Unwarranted. I'm also assistant director of the Land-Grant Films. With both of those, I advise students and faculty in various video production tasks. I also teach at the University of Tennessee. I teach video production and creative writing for the School of Journalism and Electronic Media. I have a bachelor's degree in cinema studies and moving image production, and I also have a master's in communications with an emphasis in journalism. When I returned to the University of Tennessee, I was actually in my 30s, and I wanted to actually finish my English degree so that I would have a degree and I could get more money. While I was doing it, I couldn't get some of the classes I wanted, so just on a lark, I took a cinematography as art class and an introduction to cinema studies. Ended up winning a film art award. Realized that I'd found what I wanted to do, and so I just switched everything and started throwing together, like graphing out what I wanted to do. I was subjected to a fair amount of early life trauma. I mean, I watched both my grandparents die of cancer when I was 9 years old. Was also sexually molested a couple of times. Watching my dad ruthlessly abuse my mom, and he occasionally would hit us, but I mean, I was mainly sheltered from it compared to my brother and my mom. It's weird. Back when we were little kids, back when the mom was being abused, at the time I was both protective but also annoyed. I mean, anybody that's had younger siblings probably understands. It's like, yeah, I love him, but God, it gets on my nerves. We would get whippings if we were caught awake and talking after a certain time, but he couldn't sleep unless I'd tell him bedtime stories. And I used to tell him bedtime stories. I mean, he was just always around. He was just a fixture. I mean, it was, to be honest, up until about 10 years ago, I saw him about as much as I did like my arm. I mean, we lived with each other way past when we moved out. One of the reasons I put off going to college, originally I took the gap year because I was just tired of being told I had to go to school. But when I originally had started to go back, my grandparents had just fallen ill, and so I put that off, and I moved in with them for a while. They eventually recovered, but after losing my other two grandparents, I didn't want to miss out on the end of their lives. In 2003, I was on my way to work, and we were pulling out at a stoplight, and we were third in line, and this truck, the guy was reading a map. Literally reading a map and ran it. Initially, I was basically bedridden for about 6 months, but I got out. I was able to walk at the time, but there's just so much pain. I didn't actually find out how bad my back was until I was at UT. Suddenly finding yourself in a wheelchair, I actually only missed like 2 classes due to that. I'd spent so much time and effort to get back into school, I didn't want to fail.
Well, my name is Jeffrey Kovac, and I am Professor of Chemistry Emeritus at the University of Tennessee and Director of the College Scholars Program. I became Director of College Scholars in the fall of 2011. Clinton Elmore had just been admitted to the program, so I got to know him as the director, as someone in the seminar. Clint is a very bright guy who had very good grades in College Scholars, quite a creative program in filmmaking. But he had some health problems during that time. He had hurt his back, gained some weight, and for a number of months he was in a wheelchair.
Over the course of the first 6 months when I was in the wheelchair, I put on nearly 300 pounds. I went from like 260 to around 500. And I went from moving and being constantly in motion to just nothing, and the weight just piled on.
Well, he was pretty depressed about it, as anybody would be, and I think there were times he thought he ought to give up. But one of the things that I did, I think, for him was to keep encouraging him and to make it possible for him to participate fully.
I promised myself that if I didn't lose down to 300 pounds and could get it all off as fast as I possibly can, that I was going to kill myself on my birthday. I didn't commit suicide because I basically went, I wouldn't say a starvation diet, but I cut down to about 1,600 calories a day. By the time that I graduated, I was down to about 200 and I want to say 40 pounds. So in about 2 years, I lost 250 pounds. And then I went on to lose most of that too. I mean, almost another 100 pounds after that.
I knew he had talent, and I didn't want him to fail. I didn't want him to drop out of the program. I didn't want him to drop out of school. And I did what I could to support him psychologically, financially through scholarships, help with his senior project.
When I came back to school, it wasn't just because of my condition. He had been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, and his health was not that great at the time. And my niece and nephew were young enough that I saw that if he wasn't going to be able to work, I needed to stop fucking around and make something of myself. One of the reasons I went back to school was so that I could create a nest egg for them. You know, fast forward from 10 years later, well, 9 years later, I thought everything was fine. I mean, my brother's condition had gotten fairly under control, but then his wife committed suicide, and he started going downhill fast. He started doing heroin. He started doing whatever he could get his hands on. I think having responsibilities in a way is a blessing. It can be a curse when you're in the deepest part of that funk. I've got one of the best jobs in the world because no 2 days are the same. It became kind of a shelter from the craziness of my life. It's one of those things, anyone who's dealt with, I think, depression for a long time, or at least for me, it's gonna suck no matter what, so you might as well do the thing that gets you further along than where you're at right now. One of the things I've done to try to lessen the pain is I actually got a tattoo recently. It's always fun for me. This is the first tattoo I've ever gotten that was therapeutic. It felt cool getting a dragon tattoo because my brother had over 15 dragon tattoos. He had a ridiculous number of dragon tattoos. I don't pretend to be wise, but be present in everything you're doing. Don't plan on, it's okay to have plans like I'm gonna do this and hope it gets me here, but if you're present when you're there and doing it, then what comes next doesn't matter, because it's those moments when you're actually living your life that matter.